This is a factoring question with 4 terms, and when I look at each of these terms, they have no common factor. And so the way that you would factor a 4-term expression is factor by grouping. That's a common method. And to factor by grouping, that's kind of what it says to do. You group together the first two, group together the last two, and factor out some term that they both have in common. So out of the first two, the biggest factor that they have in common is 16. They're both divisible by 16, and they both have an x squared term in common. What's left over then is if I multiply back through, 16x squared times what gives me 64x cubed? That would have to be 4x. And 16x squared times what gives me negative 80x squared? That would be a negative 5. Factor by grouping, you bring down the middle sign, and then once again, look between a 4x and a 5, what do they have in common? The only thing they've got in common is the number 1. But now I have to be a little careful because when I multiply back through, it's going to be negative 1 times something gives me negative 4x. And that's going to be positive 4x. And negative something, negative 1 times something gives me positive 5. That's going to have to be negative 5. Now if you do this right, what you see in parentheses should be exactly the same thing. And when you do factor by grouping, you're going to factor out that common grouping. So they both have a 4x minus 5 in common, and then what's left over is the 16x squared out of the first term and the minus 1 out of the second. You're almost done factoring, but again, you've got to look inside the parenthesis here to see if that's a special type of factoring, and it is. This is the difference of two squares. And when you factor the difference of two squares, they both have to be perfect squares. We're going to bring down the 4x minus 5 that we've already factored out, and then write out two sets of parentheses. To get 16x squared, we're looking for some number times itself, and that would be 4x times 4x. To get negative 1, the signs have to be opposite, and then 1 times 1. And so that would be factored completely.